I was right about this being an utterly terrifying, unexpected erotic situation. The belt shielding my bear pattern boxers was loosened by this rowdy nymphet, who instead of being the cutest girl in the world, was now aggressively pulling at my blue jeans. For someone this scary, she sure doesn't seem to know how to pants a defenseless child, not to mention her utter inability to undo a guy's shirt. If you're trying to make me submit through coerced sexual tension, at least let my most savory hairs breathe. Realizing it was a futile endeavor to try to keep my pants on, I channeled my energy into a powerful kick to her chest, the sole of my right foot sinking perfectly into the flat surface. My leg did feel a bit strange after the fact, probably because of my strict anti-degeneracy moral code, but it had to be done. Still, I felt a little. I felt like a dirty rapist deceiving an innocent child into prostitution involving kinky foot play, also forgetting that the girl was the one supposed to be doing the actual footwork. I now understand the suffering that caused Cinderella to go barefoot before having her glass slipper returned by some stroke of luck. This slipper is mine, and mine alone. So foul and fair it may be, yet it still carries the lovely smell of a young nymphet. The three weird sisters can go to hell with their prophecies and criticisms of this innocent girl's fashion sense. Wait, is that another story? And welcome to the Waifuna 2017 End of the Year podcast. I am recording on January 1st, 2018, and it's time to run down the worst year of my life. Indeed. Not really, but let's get into it. Alright, so first, in terms of New Year's resolutions, I started the blog reverieofastar.wordpress.com, and at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2017, rather, my goal was to start writing online consistently, possibly even every day, actually. But of course, that did not end up happening because that blog has around 4 posts total, I believe, all of which were posted in the first half of the year, and it's really just been hectic for the second half because I haven't been able to get time to actually invest in any of my actual pieces, which I care about. So, for example, if you go on that site, the most recent one will be a post about Suka Suka, or what do you do at the end of the world, or world end. And that post is pretty short, around 500 words, but it doesn't really say much of value, although I do think it's like most representative of my actual writing style nowadays, which is actually problematic because it's all style over substance, which is a phrase I hate using because style often is substance in narrative, but in this context, it works. And so the problem with that post, especially, is that I sugarcoat pretty much everything I say without actually considering what the point I'm going to make is first. The point of that whole post is just that Suka Suka is good. It is relatable because of its themes about love and the way it treats love in terms of what it's going for. And that may be a very vague explanation and pretty pointless because it is. And that post is just kind of just representative of everything I do poorly in writing. However, there are some good posts on that blog. For example, the Sakura Quest post, which I did take notes on the entire show throughout my entire viewing of it. And it really showed in terms of me actually using some tangible examples in my writing. However, the sentence structure and general writing mechanics of that post aren't particularly impressive, although it is still a fine post for someone who's just begun writing this year, or rather, who has tried writing thousands of times but hasn't done it until this year because he's finally realized that if you want to write, you have to force yourself to do it. And I never realized this until the midsection of this year, where I started actually writing a novel, the passage to which you listened to at the beginning of this podcast. And that story is still being edited, even though I was supposed to finish it in the summer. And so this story is 45,000 words. I started it at the beginning of August 2017, and currently it still hasn't been fully edited, even though it was completed just a couple months earlier. And I don't know what has been the problem in the last few months because the summer was extremely productive, but just something about this last stretch, these last 4 or so months, has really made it difficult for me to pursue any of my creative prospects aside from simply just consuming content constantly, tricking myself into thinking I can actually get work done without actually getting any of it done. For example, um, the a couple of channels I started following and getting really sucked into this year were the Digibro channel, the Procrastinators podcast, and a couple more. But those podcasts are fine. It's just that I've kind of gotten sucked into the weird culture of YouTube where you just start consuming videos incessantly without realizing that you haven't really partooken into any of the actual creative aspects of the platform. And overall, I will probably eventually be releasing an audiobook version of my novel on YouTube eventually, but for now, I'm not even really sure because thinking about YouTube and my future prospects elsewhere has really even deterred me from pursuing any writing at all and just kind of makes me afraid of writing in the first place because I'm constantly comparing myself to people who have found success in the medium, who have actually been writers before. And I think the first step to actually becoming a decent writer is I don't know how to put it because I don't actually know the answer myself because I've never become a successful writer. But I definitely do know that you have to force yourself to write, and anything otherwise kind of just puts you at a loss and in a mood where you kind of feel like you can do work, but you don't actually do any of it, which is what I'm doing right now with this podcast as well. And hopefully, one of my resolutions will be to get that novel published somewhere on the internet within the end of this month, perhaps by February 2017. That is. And I also just hope to get the blog going somewhere because I've planned it since the beginning of the year. I started it up with a best of 2016 post, which I didn't love, but thought was a really good start to the year and kind of signaled me actually be starting to consistently write. And because that post I churned out within like literally a day. But now things aren't seeming so good for this writing creator of mine, and I'm not going to quit, but we'll see. And so, in other news, I have started learning Japanese at the start of 2017, or rather, in December 2016. Yes, I started learning Japanese through visual novels, and I'm not sure what to say because while it is one of the most fulfilling things I've done this year, I've cheated a ton, and I really haven't been on top of my studies lately, and so I can't really applaud myself on the back for becoming decently proficient at the language that I pretty much knew nothing about prior to that, aside from a bunch of classes which aren't actually all that helpful. And so now I can kind of read anything I want with a dictionary on hand, but I don't know what to say. It's fulfilling, but I still haven't gotten to just pick up a book and read it when I want to, which is what the whole goal of this idea was first to get good enough so I could read literally whenever I wanted, or at school or anything like that, so I could kind of start building up my actual skills, because in the future I do want to pursue something in writing, and that could be translation. Um, all right, so well, that's kind of out of the way. So let's outline the works I've read in Japanese so far this year. Um, First of all, I started off with a bunch of dropped games that I wasn't able to finish really. So those would include uh, Hatsuyuki Sakura, Angel Beats, the visual novel. Um, well, in general, there are just a bunch of other works that I haven't completed, and even the fact that I can't even remember them right now is a testament to how little I kind of cared about those games. But the ones I have finished were, I started the year off with Island, the 2016 visual novel by Frontwing. Um, and to kind of summarize my thoughts on that one, it being my first work read in Japanese, I kind of realized just how difficult it kind of is to interpret media when um, the two main languages are different in so many ways, grammatically, culturally, and I guess in general, just being aware of the differences between languages. And so there will be a lot of times where I just don't interpret the line in English, and I guess I immediately just keep all of the words in Japanese. Um, this is going on a terrible tangent, but um, I guess I'll just go over my impressions of the actual game. Well, the game itself is rather it's rather slow, but I'm not really sure if that's due to my slow Japanese, or if it's actually because of the pacing that I wasn't really able to get into. And overall, the game doesn't actually leave much of an impression. It's kind of just a thing that I've played and say I've played. It's great aesthetically. It has great CGs, poignant text, and the prose is something that's really easy to get into, even as a first-time reader. And overall, I guess if you like time travel plots, and ones that don't need to be done particularly well, but do something interesting by the end, I would say play Island by Frontwing, because G.O., the scenario writer for Island, also wrote a visual novel named Himawari, and that one is possibly my favorite visual novel, although I've only read it in English, so take that as you will. But G.O. is a writer who does not give any fucks. He takes a story someplace and rides it off the rails, whether it makes sense or not. And I guess it could be the quality of his writing in that way, in that regard, can be kind of debatable, but overall, there's always kind of a poignant message to his stories to be had, and a point to them. But by the end of Island, um, you don't really take anything too special away from it, aside from the fact that you realize, damn, that was a pretty well built up, dramatically satisfying conclusion. But it's never. I haven't really thought about the game since the 6 months since I've beaten it, because I beat it in August, or not 6 months, sorry, the 4 months since I've played it, because I played it in August, and I've forgotten most about it, although I still do think the ending is rather satisfying. that was a terrible review of that game, and I'm terrible on the mic. Alright, so I guess glossing over that one and moving on to the next work, I already read it in Japanese. That is Oregairu Volume 1, or My Youth Romantic Comedy is Wrong as I Expected, by Wataru, sorry. I really don't know what to say about this one either, because I've read the same story. I've read volume 1 of Oregairu at least 3 times by now. Twice in English, once for the fan translation and once in the official translation. And this, I believe, is the 3rd time I've watched it. I mean, I've read it, but I have watched the original series at least 4 times as well. So, uh, it was kind of a safety pick because I understood all of the plot, the characters, everything beforehand, before actually getting into the meat of the story or anything like that. And so, unlike Island, I had the advantage of having understood the whole story before actually getting into it. And I guess I've already kind of formulated an opinion about the series before I actually having started to read it. So I have that as well. And I don't think my comments on it will be particularly insightful in that regard, because I just think the series is great as usual, but the first volume of Oregairu I'm kind of torn on because it's possibly the weakest link in the series. I believe the later volumes, or the ones adapted by the second season of the show, so I believe that is everything after volume 7, are the best iterations of the series. But I guess the first half's fine too, but the first volume, I don't know what to say. The art in particular is fairly underwhelming, especially given how different Ponkan 8, the artist of the Oregairu series' art, has evolved throughout the series as the series has progressed. Yeah, so I guess the illustrations aren't that great. And in addition to that, the story is kind of cookie cutter, and there literally is just the cookie scene that everyone kind of knows from Oregairu, or I guess the first thing they are exposed to. I guess it's kind of what sells you on the series, whether you actually enjoy it or not, can really be boiled down to the first episode of the show, honestly, because it establishes elements such as the cynical narration involved in Hachiman's headspace. It gets familiar with the type of comedy the series goes for, and the, I guess, general mellow mood of it. Nothing is kind of out of place with the typical rom-com genre, aside from the jabs at the genre itself, which I guess many people kind of dislike because of how self-aware and I guess the series, most people criticize it for poking fun at the rom-com tropes while falling into them, which isn't a particularly insightful thing to include in your story, I guess. But I love it nonetheless, because I am in that period where I guess characters shouting their desires, and I guess generally just being empathetic people, regardless of just being empathetic people in anime, a medium so concentrated with I guess grandeur and putting up great appearances. I think Oregairu kind of shines in out of all these kind of shows. But that is just about it for Volume 1. It kind of summarizes my thoughts on the series. And I guess I do validate everything I believe about the series by reading the first volume in Japanese. I do hope to perhaps make it one of my resolutions to finish that series by the time this year ends, because the series ending and closing in on its 13th volume, I believe, sometime this year, something like that. And I do definitely want to get it on that finale, because I've been waiting to see the where these characters will end up, and I guess where they will grow by the time I graduate, because I will be graduating this June/July, and will be out of high school by then, like many of the high schoolers in anime. And so, what's a better way to send off my high school years than seeing the conclusion to one of my favorite youth series, is my youth romantic comedy as wrong as I expected. Alright. So moving on to actually I believe those are the two works I've finished this year. Oh wait, no. There was also White Album 2 Introductory Chapter, which I started on at the start of August and finished by the end of the month. That time being one where I had no internet access, so I just literally just sat around and played that game all day. And it's very strange that it took me that long to finish a game that has around 0.5 megabytes of text, and should usually take the normal Japanese reader around 10 hours to complete. I believe I clocked in on that game with at least a couple hundred hours, no, maybe 100 hours, because it took maybe less than a month, and I'm not sure how long that would have taken, but it is what it is. Same with the rest of the games I've played. I've taken a significantly longer time to read them, including Island, which I did finish after 6 months, I believe, because I started reading it in February or March and finished in August. And so aside from those games, I'm currently playing Kitto Sumiwataru Asairu Yorimo, which is also abbreviated as Asairo generally. And I guess it's kind of the first game where it being in Japanese has kind of completely changed my perception of the story, because this game is literally untranslatable because of the kanji puns, the significance the story puts on the characters' names, which are all significant in the way they're read and generally associated with the small details of the Japanese language. And I can't say that I'm that great a fan of it, because there's a bunch of Japanese lore and puns, I guess, in there that I kind of feel the author kind of threw it. The author being Shuman Yu, threw in there just for the sake of them being there. Not that they're terrible or anything, just that they kind of don't appeal to me. The text is poignant, very meticulously crafted by Schumann, as most readers in the visual novel community can usually attest to, or rather support. And I guess I don't have any real deep thoughts, I guess, on Asahiro, or I can't really, there's no deep meditation I have on it. It's just a fine series that I have quite a few problems with. Although it is pretty difficult. So maybe that's the reason why I'm not really enjoying it, because it's so damn long due to how slowly I freaking read. Although I think it's around half the length of Island, so there is definitely a problem of me having started the game in August and still not even being around halfway done with it. Well, in any case, that is my experience of Asahiro, and I just died in real life and in the game. Alright, I guess those are all. That's a rundown of what has been interesting in this year. I guess academics have been fine. I've kind of tipped down in my inspiration to pretty much do any school-related work at this time. But we'll see how that changes, because I guess things do change by the blink of an eye. So I'll get into the resolutions I have for this year. And so first of all, I want to read at least 2 to 3 hours of Japanese every single day on this year without any exceptions. And so that will include no excuses of me talking about how much homework I have and brushing off the daily studying for Japanese that I have to do. And also, I guess, also finishing my reading even if there are other things going on, because I tend to really get distracted and kind of focus on one thing at a time. And so, for example, if I just moved Windows to an SSD earlier today, and I've kind of been focused on that the whole day. I haven't been able to get any studying in. And so I've already kind of failed this resolution because of the first day of this year of me not having read any Japanese, aside from, I guess, this game, which is not particularly educational, since I can't search up any of the words or the kanji without being able to hook up the text. And so I failed that resolution, and I'm not sure what I'm actually going to do to fix that, because it's been a problem for me for as long as I know. I'm typically one to only focus on one task at a time. Today I have an exercise as well, which I've actually gotten into this year. For the starting in the summer, I've been doing push-ups, sit-ups, all those general exercises, just to keep me, I guess, my body actually functional. Not particularly to build any muscle or for aesthetic appeal, but just to keep my body healthy, I guess. And I've kind of been slacking off on that recently, so I'm trying to get back into the habit of exercising every day, and for at least 30 minutes a day at the very least, because generally whenever it's the school year, I jog to school, which is perfect exercise, and I don't really need anything other than that aside from when I get home and doing a couple of push-ups. I guess I do feel like way more energized and just happier when I do force myself to do exercise, which I think I hate, but actually love because of the mood it puts me in. And so in general, I do want to get back into exercising. And so one of my other resolutions this year will be to exercise every day for at least 30 minutes. And I guess that will include my daily jogging whenever I go to school. And once I finish school this year, I hope to keep jogging every day in some way or another, just to keep up my mental health and physical health. And speaking of health, I started meditating in at the start of this summer, and it actually did wonders for me. It got me productive in the summer. I read in Japanese for 8 hours a day, without really feeling tired from it because of the mental release of meditation, of just 10 minutes a day just sitting around thinking about nothing, which I do recommend a lot of people do, because rather than thinking about the spiritual connection to um, meditation, I guess it just does help in general to keep your mind off things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. For example, if I get into an argument with a terrible classmate of mine sometime earlier in the day over whether it be a group project or just people just being annoying in general or pissing me off, that will not leave me. There is literally no way I will stop thinking about that unless I've kind of taken the time to actually um brood over my not brood over my thoughts, but I guess eliminate literally all positive and negative emotions I have about that person. And there's pretty much no other way for me to do it. So I do want to start meditating starting tomorrow, I guess, and for the rest of the day for at least 10 minutes a day, doing breathing exercises. I guess even when I'm just walking around, you can kind of meditate whenever the hell you want. It's not something you have to sit down for all the time, although it usually helps that way. And I'm dead. But yeah, I just getting back into the habit of being a healthy boy. And speaking of being a healthy boy again, I've changed my diet so that every meal I make myself, which is breakfast and lunch, those will all be healthy foods, including a bunch of fruits, carbs like bread. I've switched over from white to whole grain bread this year, and I can't eat white bread anymore because of how just the thought of food being healthy makes it taste better, honestly, because I guess in general I prioritize the aftertaste of food and the feeling it gives me after eating it rather than the immediate taste of it. And just thinking about that while eating it makes it taste better in the first place. So there's that. Um, Although one of my other resolutions this year will be to my third one will be to stop um accepting food when people offer it to me just because it's tasty. Because I haven't eaten chips or candy in probably a whole year. But when people do offer me things like curry or anything that kind of seems like if I have a little bit of it, it'll be fine, I end up taking it, and it's a terrible habit of mine because there's literally no reason to eat food just because someone offered it to you. If it doesn't fit into your, I guess your regular diet, why should it on some special occasion? Honestly, I don't see the reasoning for that. And I guess, yeah, there's that. I guess controlling my urges. That's basically the crux of all of the resolutions I've come up with this year. Um, let's see. I guess goals in aside from that, the MEX Japanese scholarship for 2017, which allows you to do undergraduate studies in Japan. The application starts sometime this month, and I guess the exams are in I believe they're at the start of summer. And so if I do well in those and the interview, then I guess I get to go to Japan for graduate studies, but I'm not relying on it because I know I'm terrible at a bunch of the exam topics, such as math, I guess pressure in writing the English test as well, because I work terribly under pressure, and I guess I'm just generally bad at forcing myself to do things because I'm completely controlled by my mood like most of the time. which is another bad habit I have to fix. And so there's that. I do want to try to, I guess, within from this time till then, I want to, I guess, invest as much as possible of my time into um, improving myself and getting the skills required to receive that scholarship and pass all the necessary tests they are going to be doing. So that's math, English, Japanese, as well as, I guess, general speaking skills, which is why I'm doing this podcast, because as you can tell, I am a terrible speaker and I take a long time to ruminate over my thoughts, and at the end of whatever I say, there's not much of a point to be had anyway. But that will change by the end of this year, I hope. That is one of my resolutions, to be good, not even good, but competent at speaking. And you might notice there are a bunch of pauses where I'm just ruminating over my thoughts. And I guess this podcast is fairly difficult to listen to because of these extended pauses, and I guess it being rather boring with boring game footage. But I'm just trying not to stutter whenever I speak, which is literally what I always do. I have difficulty starting a sentence and ending it without repeating any words I've said in the sentence, as I just did there. I am the stutter king, the worst boy at speaking, unfortunately. So yes, that will be my fourth resolution, to be decent or competent at speaking to people in general, or maybe even practicing enough that I can actually make a coherent point at all without having to script any of my thoughts, because I do want to get really good at doing unscripted content, because literally all of the scripted text I've written is not even really that impressive to begin with, and I take forever to churn it out. So if I can actually just get my thoughts out there without having to brood over them or agonize over the way they will come out and the way they'll sound, I think that I can kind of be a much more creative person in that regard. This is probably really difficult to listen to, god damn it. But it is necessary because I want to become a decent speaker, and this is what you have to do. In terms of, I guess, because all the goals I've kind of listed out so far, do your best at X thing, like, for example, read Japanese every day, but those aren't exactly tangible goals. Those are just, I guess, guidelines that I'm setting myself for, but not actual achievements. For example, me wanting to maybe publish a post, perhaps receiving maybe, I don't know, 1,000 followers on my blog or 1,000 followers on YouTube, because I will be starting to write video essays sometime soon whenever I have free time. I'll probably be discontinuing the heavily edited and picture fulfilled scripts I've been writing on the blog, because those aren't even really good, and second of all, they're kind of boring to read because they don't have any video, and I don't even know how to get my point across without showing what I'm talking about, which kind of gets me into also the weaknesses of video essays, even though I've kind of just been talking about how they're better than text. I guess video essays don't have as much concentrated information and aren't really as they don't tend to be as dense as text posts, because I guess the reason why you would make a video in the first place is to kind of make the best out of the medium, and I guess as a whole use use the spaces you can in, for example, recording audio to kind of make it a more worthwhile experience to listen to make your points through video rather than text, through presenting that point rather through just writing it down, which is, I guess you can kind of make a bunch of arguments about how writing itself is presentation and artistic in that regard, but that is a argument for another time. I just generally kind of feel that video essays are less dense in information and are therefore kind of worse, even though they kind of improve your speaking abilities and are a lot better for the market because of how literally everyone has been glued to YouTube and other social media, whereas I guess text blogs have died completely. I will be the first one to admit that the blog that I'm running right now has pretty much no viewers and probably won't go anywhere in the near future because of it being a text blog and a blog about anime, which is a extremely niche medium in a niche format of text. I don't think they particularly coincide very well because most people watching anime, or the mainstream audience at least, will be gravitating towards video because that is the medium of the shows they love, I guess. That's why they're watching anime. They want to see video, something they can sit back and just listen to and consume without too much effort. I guess that kind of segues into my point about being a consumer, because this year I've consumed countless videos and never really got out of the habit of just sitting there and consuming without actually thinking. I guess one of my problems is that although I do kind of watch videos that are relevant to my desired career of writing and perhaps being a media person or internet personality, the problem is that I don't really consider what I actually think about those videos outside of that was a great video or I agree with the point. I don't really challenge my own perspective through these videos that people have released, because you kind of need to always be critical of what you're consuming if you want to grow as a person while consuming it, and rather than just falling into stagnation and consuming whatever already validates your current beliefs. And that is definitely a problem for me. So I guess New Year's resolution number 5, consume content in a way, I guess consume content that you know will be relevant to what you're doing sometime in the future, rather than just arbitrarily consuming whatever I'm in the mood for. So I guess rather than listening to a podcast just because it is a podcast, consider the point that is being made in that video, and perhaps listening to podcasts only when I need to get something out of it, rather than just listening to it, which will kind of be difficult because I won't be able to let go of crutches I've been holding on to, such as the Procrastinators podcast and the Digibro content that I've literally consumed thousands of hours of, because I started listening to those channels over a year ago and have listened to them incessantly pretty much every single day since I've discovered them. And I guess the rabbit hole you go down of when you find a creator you really love is that I guess you've been a part of their narrative so long that you don't see the flaws, or I guess you lose sight of the point of watching their content aside from just continuing the narrative and following this person who you've kind of vicariously experienced life through. That is one of the, I guess, pitfalls of internet personalities, and that one that I will be mindful of while I continue to discover more about becoming an internet person, I guess, and someone who makes their money independently from, I guess, corporations. So maybe that could be a sixth New Year's resolution of me actually making $1 off of media and being on the internet. Yep, that will actually be my tangible goal. Make at least $1 off of my content on the internet, whether that be through my fiction, YouTube videos on Patreon, or I guess working for a current content creator, perhaps being an editor or something where my skills will be marketable. But the most likely to make it of those goals will be the most likely way I will achieve that goal is through perhaps translation work and I guess working with an existing translation group or company such as a fan translation group accepting donations, one that can raise maybe commissions for a translation, or like a dojin, for example, on Reddit, someone one that someone really wants translated, I guess. Although that introduces a bunch of annoying legal bullshit that I don't want to deal with, but is inevitable when you make money on the internet. As I don't know a thing about my place in this world right now because I want to make money on our internet, but I have literally never worked a real job before, aside from a couple part-time jobs in the summer. And I guess you can call me a lazy asshole for that, but it is what it is. And so, aside from that sixth resolution, I don't have many other goals for this year. I guess I'll end off this episode of the wonderful Reverie of a Star WaifuNet podcast by listing out the final tangible goals that I want this year. Tangible goal number 1, or real resolution number 1. Get $1 on the internet. That summarizes it. Tangible goal number 2. Finish at least 2 more novels of at least 50,000 words by the end of this year, and have them fully edited by myself or an editing partner. Tangible goal number 3. Finish every single Oregairu volume up to volume 12 or 13 or whatever is released at the time. And maybe, let's see, 15 visual novels read this? No, 10 visual novels. I will have read 10 visual novels in Japanese by the end of this year. That is, I guess, less than a month, once per month, in addition to the Oregairu volumes that I'll be reading. Tangible goal number 3, get involved in some kind of niche, or I guess discover some type of niche media that I did not discover before that. Whether that be an author that I really get into that literally no one knows, which is kind of the same case with Digibro, because I've been following him since he had around 50,000 subscribers, and now he has 300,000 and makes pretty much all of his money off Patreon. Actually, no. I will from the tangible number 3. I will be excluding YouTube content creators because I guess they're so easy to find, and it's kind of hard for me to become a fanatic of YouTubers in general, rather than, for example, writers I've discovered I literally just fall in love with immediately and never change my opinion of, such as Vladimir Nabokov, who I've since I've finished reading Lolita this summer, have fallen in love with completely because his writing is orgasmic in every way. The prose, I guess, the message, the themes of his stories are kind of simple and I guess obvious. No, not obvious, but there are things that wouldn't you wouldn't take notice of, but are important to life in general. That is kind of how I would describe what I love about Vladimir Nabokov, aside from his prose. Oh, and so I guess I just went on a tangent there, but yes, tangible goal number 3 is to get into some type of artist that I really love and can connect to in a number of ways and take influence from for my own personal creation. And this will have to be a non-mainstream artist that I discover through typical means, and especially not YouTube. I hope it might be a small blogger or someone that does the same thing as me, because that would be great. Alright, so tangible goal number 4. I do want to get a YouTube channel set up at the very least, and so I guess to have at least 100 followers by the end of this year on that YouTube channel, I guess subscribers, or maybe 100 followers on my blog. I also kind of wish, rather than having all this shit on spending all my time on Twitter and I guess obsessing over those numbers, I guess followers, if you will, because Twitter culture is all about the immediate benefits of what you're doing on the internet. Very little of it lasts forever, and so I guess if you become a content creator and then later, once you have a decent following, you start using Twitter, I guess everything becomes kind of more meaningful because the interactions are necessary. You need to have those immediately. You need to sell yourself as a person by having direct contact with those who are invested in your content. So I guess rather than actually having Twitter followers or kind of being obsessed with the consumer culture of the internet, I want to be a creator. Yes, I want to say by the end of this year, I am more of a creator than a consumer. I guess that is kind of a tangible goal, but pretty vague. I can't really describe exactly how I'll be measuring that level of achievement, but it is what it is, and that will be one of my goals. I guess to have 100 followers that come from my creative content and my output rather than my nature as a consumer. I guess tangible goal number 5. Okay, yep. This is kind of a small one, I guess, but by the end of this year, I'll be 18, and being an adult, I want to know whether or not I will be continuing to pursue this path, this rosy-eyed path of just thinking I'll become a writer, because it's been something I've been thinking about forever, and anyone who's been a creative person or creator will probably know the same thing, but people can't nag on you constantly about what you will be doing in the future and how difficult it is to explain that you want to do something that has pretty much no material prospects that you can describe to other people and no benefits aside from artistic integrity and getting to do what you love doing. And so I guess the tangible goal I want here is to know whether I'll be actually considering that path at all in the future once I'm out of school. Will I continue to pursue something in pursue something that I love, or will I just become a corporate slave as some computer programmer guy or whatever I'm going to be doing? What will I be doing? What are my plans for the future? Not me deciding what I will be doing in the future, but some kind of plan. And it won't have to be I will become a journalist or I will become a translator. Just, will I become someone who pursues what I love doing, or someone who is going to become a corporate slave in the and a cog in the machine of society? And I guess that goal, that fifth goal, is the most meaningful one, because it is influenced by the outcome of every other tangible goal I've just created. Whether I actually pursue writing as a career and see it as something that is worth pursuing in the long run depends on if I can get my 2 novels out, for example, and whether I actually follow through with any of the goals I've stated here. And so this has kind of been a downer podcast. So how about I end it off by killing this guy? Yes, he has died. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Waifu Nut Reverie of a Star podcast. Please follow me on the next video.